the limiting reagent in any chemical reaction is the one that is consumed first. So once the limiting reagent is gone, then the reaction will stop. For example, if you have a reaction like A with 2B will give you a product. So if 0.751 mole of A are mixed with 1.43 moles of B, which one is the limiting reagent? We can see from the reagent that we need 1 mole of A to react with 2 moles of B. So if we are using 0.751, in order for A to be the limiting reagent, the number of moles of B has to be at least double the amount of A. But we know that B is only 1.43 moles, which is less than which is less than double the 0.7151. That means that B here is the limiting reagent. And how much do we need to use from, how much will be used from A? It has to be half the amount of the moles of B. So the amount that is consumed from A will be half the 1.43 divided by 2. So half the amount of B, which is going to be 0.715 mole of A. Okay, so B here is the limiting reagent and only 0.715 mole of A will be used. That means that that there will be an amount of A that will not be used. The amount of A that will remain at the end equals 0.751, the whole amount or the whole moles we used from A minus the amount that will actually be used in the reaction, which will give you 0.036 moles of A that will not be used. So let's have an example to see how we can calculate that or apply that on a practical example. So a reaction between calcium and oxalate to give calcium oxalate is illustrated below. So it's clear from this reaction that the reaction will go that 1 mole of calcium will react with 1 mole of oxalate. So if we mix 1 gram of calcium chloride, and this is the molecular mass of calcium chloride, 110.98, and 1.15 gram of sodium oxalate, and this is the molecular mass of sodium oxalate in water. What is the limiting reagent here? Which one will be the limiting reagent? Will it be calcium chloride or sodium oxalate? And the other part of the question asks you what fraction of the non-limiting reagent is left over. The first thing we need to do now is to calculate how many moles of calcium chloride are there in 1 gram and how many moles of sodium oxalate are there in 1.15 grams. So moles of calcium chloride in the reaction will equal weight mass over molecular mass, so 1 over 110.98, which will give you 9.01 millimole of calcium, and the moles of sodium oxalate will equal 1.15 over 134. So that will give you 8.58 millimole. Please be aware that 1 mole of calcium chloride contains only 1 mole of calcium because there is only 1 calcium atom in calcium chloride. And also 1 mole of sodium oxalate has only 1 mole of oxalate because it only contains 1 of the oxalate moiety in the compound. So now we see that the number of moles of calcium in the reaction are 9.01 mole, while of the oxalate is 8.58 mole. That means that the oxalate is the limiting reagent now. So that means there will be some calcium chloride remaining unreacted in the reaction. How much will remain then? The unreacted, the fraction that was not react or that was left over of the calcium chloride will be 9.01 minus 8.58, which is 0.43 millimoles, sorry, of calcium. Now we know that there are 0.43 millimole of calcium. So what fraction is that? So that is 0.43. If we divide that by the total moles of calcium that were used, 9.01, and multiply that by 100, we will get the fraction as 4.8%. So 4.8% of the calcium was left at the end of the reaction because the oxalate here was the limiting reagent, because the amount of or the number of moles of the oxalate was less than the total moles of calcium that was used in this reaction. So this is how to use the limiting reagent and how to calculate which one is the limiting reagent and calculate the remaining amount. Um, just a small note for you, if you got questions like these in a test or any question like that to answer, you have to pay attention to exactly what you are asked to find. So we didn't only ask you about which one is the limiting reagent, but or how much was left over from the the one which is not the limiting reagent, or the other reagent which is not the non-limiting reagent, but we asked you what is the fraction of the non-limiting reagent that was left over. So this simple division at the end will get you to the answer required. If you forget something like that, you definitely are losing marks. So you always have to pay attention to what kind of question we are asking you, what kind of information we want you to give us.